Good afternoon, and thanks everyone for joining us. My name is Corey Webb, and I'm Director of Partnerships here at Churn Zero, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar titled Scaling Strategic Customer Conversations, How AI Agents Are Rewriting the Rules of Listening at Scale. Before we get started today, I do want to remind everyone that we are recording this session, and we'll be sending out a link to the recording tomorrow afternoon. But throughout the presentation today, please submit your questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And we'll address as many of them as we can. And then we've also enabled the chat for today's webinar, so please feel free to engage with one another there. And Bob will be throwing out some questions, so let's engage there. But if you could direct your questions to the Q&A, that would just be a little bit easier for us going through those. For that. And now I'm pleased to introduce to you our speaker today. We have Bob London. Bob is a customer discovery and listening expert who teaches companies how to have strategic, authentic, and revealing customer conversations that drive engagement, insights, and revenue. We're excited to have him here today to share his tips on how AI can help with all of this. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Bob.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you for all of your work and strategy leading up to this, and to Churn Zero for the platform today that allows
Yeah.
to all come and share. Thank you very much. It's nice to see. I'm looking at the participant attendee list. Nice to see some familiar names and a lot of new names. I'm just let you know, I'm a big chat guy on webinar chat. Feel free to we can use the Q&A too, but I'm going to ask some questions in order to foster engagement. And rather than setting up a poll, we're just going to use the chat. So you'll hear me ask questions and ask you to answer in the chat. So this is it's a very compelling topic for me. I am in the business of, and I'll introduce myself a little bit more at length in a minute, but I basically have human-to-human conversations for a living, and I get paid to do it. I get paid to do customer listening tours for companies where, going out and finding out what are their customers' real challenges and priorities, and understanding opportunities and gaps in, innovation and other things. And so what I had this moment a few months ago where at one point I was joking with myself and some other people, and I said, I hope I can retire before I have to learn anything about AI or get affected by it. And that was haha. And now, so then I realized that it is a thing. Agentic AI, insights, AI's ability to synthesize lots of information very clearly, which I'll give you an example of, it was all very real. And so I've leaned into it really hard. And today is the result of some research and insights that I've gotten, and hopefully will be instructive to you. So but just to make sure everyone's synapses are firing, I'm going to ask a question, and I want you to use the chat and type in the first answer that I see that, is, in my judgment, is correct. Will become designated an honorary chief listening officer. So it's kind of a brain teaser question. So you have to listen and connect the dots, which is what CS people are great at. If you are designated an honorary chief listening officer, you will join the prestigious ranks of people like Jay Nathan here in the picture, and you will get a gift. You'll get a gift like a choice of a branded thing that says honorary chief listening officer. And, it's a really big deal because I invented it. So, yeah, thank you, Kristen, for going with my sense of humor there. So here's the question, and again, as soon as you think of an answer, type it in, and the first one I see that I deem correct will be an honorary chief listening officer. Here's the question: one of the heaviest cost burdens for airlines, and by the way, if you've heard this question before on a different talk, then please don't answer. One of the heaviest cost burdens for airlines is what they pay for fuel. Very high fuel expenses. However, in the next 10 years, analysts that follow the airline industry are predicting that what airlines pay for fuel is going to drop by billions and billions of dollars over the next, let's say, 10 years. What is going to cause airline costs, fuel costs, to drop so precipitously? And I'm going to finish the question, but we already may have a winner. What's going to cause, and it's based on an innovation in another industry. So that's it. So Mike, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Mohsen, M-O-H-S-E-N, he said GLP-1. Now you used a question mark, and so I'm not going to take points off. This is like Jeopardy. You have to be declarative. GLP-1, yes. Mike, hit me up on LinkedIn, and you are now designated an honorary chief listening officer. Congratulations, Mike. And I don't know how you connected the dots so quickly there, but that's pretty good. So congratulations again, Mike. So here we are with this is me again. I've had the privilege of working with companies all over the world, and doing these customer listening tours, but also in the context of custom. Thank you, Maureen. Yes, it is crazy. In the context of doing customer listening tours, I developed something called the radically authentic discovery method, which is a way of a toolkit and a methodology of asking deeper questions that are customer focused questions, not vendor focused, and listening skills, and put them all together. And so anytime you hear me talk about the RAD method, radically authentic discovery, it's the fruit of 3,000 customer discovery conversations. And yes, I've heard all the jokes. Boy, your ears must be tired. Ha ha, I get it. Um, so today, I'm going to give a little bit about my journey scaling conversation insights in my world. We're going to talk about the future, which I refer to as hyperscaling insights with AI agent-based research, or agentic AI research, also now known as vibe research. If you've heard of vibe coding, similar kind of idea. And then we're going to talk about the risks of garbage in, garbage out when it comes to conversations. In other words, if you have really kind of basic check the box customer conversations, then there's not going to be anything for the AI to study and provide rich insight. And then I'm going to end on this very important message about customer success, what I see as the customer success function's strategic contribution to their own companies, which could be an opportunity for you as you go forward, what I call being the ear of the vendor. So this is basically a chart where you can see the number of hours it used to take me in 2014 to do basically interview 10 of my clients' customers, 50 hours or so. Now, baked into that was the fact that this is to tell you how old school it was. I was based in the Washington, D.C. area. My clients were some of them. So I used to drive around and do one-on-one in-person interviews. And it was a real pain, but there was no other way at the time. There really wasn't really any obvious way to do it other than that. So 50 hours, I was doing human to human conversations, face to face, taking manual notes, which I still have scribbled, and then writing a report. And it took a lot of time. Sometimes it was 12 or 15 customer interviews, but the gist of it is 50 hours back in 11 years ago. Fast forward to a few years later. Oh, and that's when I started to develop the RAD method. That's why you see the value, this orange line, this yellow line spiking here, because I started asking better questions and listening better and getting inside the customer's head more. So then I started doing virtual interviews. Obviously, we all know what that is. It's just using Teams or Zoom or Google Meet or something. And that dropped the number of hours, not quite in half, but almost in half. Then I started recording the interviews, which gave me the benefit of being able to be a little more present in the interviews, but still having to take notes. And then we had AI note takers. I believe everyone knows what that is these days. And also around that time, using AI to generate the reports. Any of you who've used tools like Google Notebook LM or other tools will be familiar with the idea of the push button report, basically. Now, I couldn't just take that and give it to my client. There was a lot of work to be done to make sure it was reflective of the actual conversations I was having with their customers. But 50 hours down to 11 hours, that is crazy. But what we're really going to talk, so that's the history, but where are we going? It's hiring or commissioning or creating an AI agent to go out and talk to your customers. I mean, talk with, like have a conversation with. And if you think that's crazy, if you think it's not a real thing, if you're not comfortable with it, just hold on. Please don't pass judgment, because we are going to talk about that. So we're talking about an agent from the vendor and a human customer, but maybe in a year, Corey, we'll do this again and we'll talk about agent to agent, where customers create buying agents. It's unbelievable what's happening out there. So let's just calm down and get back to where we are today. I started getting fascinated with this. I started really looking into it, and I think it would be helpful for me to share some of this with you, of what I learned and how it came about. So this is what we tend to think humans are good at. We ask questions. We're human. We listen. We have conversations. We empathize. We're able to ask follow-up questions based on the context of what was just said. We can hear risks and opportunities, and we can connect the dots. And I would say that humans have been good at that. Of course, there's not really been any alternative to using humans for that. So this is what some of us get paid to do. Uh, but AI is getting pretty good at those things too. And I would say more than pretty good. And it's not just asking a question like a survey, it's asking a question, listening to the answer, and asking a follow-up question based on that answer. Trust me when I say that, because I've done so much synthesis of customer interviews using AI over the last 2 or 3 years, that sometimes AI does a better job than humans, including me, of hearing actual risk, uncovering opportunities, connecting the dots with customers. Because, partly because, here's what AI is very good at, in my experience: consistently repeating a task, not getting, in other words, quality control. It happens, this conversation happens with every customer the same, depending on, of course, what the customer says. Not getting distracted or multitasking, not having happy ears, that, or any other of 1,000 unconscious biases that we have. Not feeling busy or overwhelmed, back-to-back calls, not having other time conflicts like having to, pick up a child at daycare, or the stress that comes with that. Never getting tired, never having, meeting conflicts, things like that. This is so I'm going to stop and I'm going to say that this is the part of the presentation where sometimes, I'm not saying you guys, start to feel a little bit warm, like it's a little flush, like we're in CS, we're human, that's what makes us special. That's why customers like us. We have relationships with customers. AI bots and agents can't have relationships. Understood. What I'm here to tell you is I'm a living, breathing example of someone who makes a living having human conversations. And I have become very motivated to lean into what's going on here. And the more I've leaned into it, the more opportunity there is for me. I encourage you in the strongest possible way, if you haven't already, is to try and hold on to your any sort of pushback or negative thoughts or sort of, again, that sort of heat that you feel like, wait a minute, he's saying that an AI agent can not get distracted, and I do get distracted. So what does that mean? Try and hang on to that. Try and just put it aside for the next 30 minutes or so. I feel it. I feel you. I get it. It's real. But the more important aspect of this is if we lean into what AI can do, it will become less of a threat and more of a tool for all of us. That's my belief until one day it takes over the world and then we're all in trouble. So, and hopefully I'll be retired by then. So, so I started to lean into this and research it even more. I encourage you to, this happens to be the Wall Street Journal, so I think it's behind a paywall. I think the podcast may not be, but the articles. What can AI chatbots teach us about empathy? Surprising ability to provide supportive language to those in need. Okay. Large language models, or LLMs, can do a better job than humans at making people feel seen and heard. Then I did a little more digging. Turns out Allstate found that AI is more empathetic than their own insurance reps. I'm going to pause for another moment and say some of you relate to this topic in consumer terms, and you say, okay, I would not want my customers in B2B to experience what I experience when I try to chat with my cable company bot, right? So we are really we are talking about a couple different things here, and I'm not going to digress too much, but I will say that there are issues with that world, and I'm not here to defend or promote that. What I'm here to talk about is more on the B2B side. So what Allstate found was that emails now generated by AI are less accusatory and jargony and more empathetic. So what I would ask you to do is compare less accusatory, jargony, and empathetic with your most recent experience with a consumer vendor, right? Insurance or anybody else, a human. And I would say that we should all crave and deserve something that is not accusatory, jargony, and non-empathetic. And so that was part one of this article that grabbed my attention. AI can also remove the chance of a conversation going off the rails. Why? Because AI doesn't get defensive or offended or annoyed. It's if you train it that way, you could train it to do those things, but you wouldn't. The CIO of Allstate said generative AI gives customers the benefit of the doubt. And I just read that and I went, wow, that is really an experience that is different from so many experiences I've had as a consumer with companies that we pay good money to every month, whether it's insurance or cable or Best Buy or anybody. So all of this is the path I went down to kind of figure out what is this going to mean? What does this mean? What can it mean? So the next thing I did was something very human. I did my own listening tour. I set up brief, like 30-minute meetings with a bunch of customer success VPs, directors, and chief customer officers in my network. So these were warm. I knew them, and I did not tell them what it was about. But when we got on the Zoom, I think it was Zoom, I said, I want to find out what do you think about using agentic AI to have open-ended customer feedback conversations? And agentic AI, as it says here, simply refers to an AI system that's designed to pursue a goal or a workflow without tons of human supervision. So it goes away, does something, brings it back. So get ready to chat your answer here, okay? Because I'm going to ask you something. The question I asked these 22 CS leaders, and this was probably 4 or 5 months ago, how comfortable would you be using an AI agent to have open-ended customer feedback conversations? What number? I'm not asking you for your number, and try and chat it to everyone. Some of you are set on host and panelists. I'm not asking for your number. I'm saying, what do you think 22 CS directors, VPs, and CCOs said a few months ago in answer to this? What number on average did they give? 4, 5, 4, 6? Did I see 12 and a half? Yeah, 1.25. We're really getting in the weeds here. Okay, this is really interesting. So you're not going to believe it then. You're really not going to believe it because what I'm looking at is an average of maybe 4 at the most. Someone said 10. Yvetta said 10. Okay. The answer is like 8.2. Now, I'm going to give you my synthesis and hypothesis on where that came from because I had the benefit of hearing the conversations, not just asking for a number between 1 and 10. So I asked them 1 to 10, obviously. I said, well, what's behind that number? And I asked them some other questions. Basically, the closer you get in leadership to the company business goals and priorities, the more you hear about what you need to do and what the constraints are and what the goals are. What I mean by that is if you're an individual CSM, you may have not as sort of a breadth of field to understand what's going on and how things are changing. Not that you have your head in the sand, but you're not forced to deal with it. When you're in leadership, you are getting messages from the board to the C-suite to the next level to you that say, I'm sorry, you have to cut or you have to add more customers per CSM. And you have to keep adding, you're gonna have to figure out how do you add more value without adding people. And strong recommendation, go look at AI. So they're feeling that from the top down. Okay. And I think that's where the 8.2 comes from because I talked to them and I got a sense of it. So here's what else they said. Because the next question was, well, what is this? Where's the first place you'd think to use this? And they said, well, the first thing is long tail customers, low touch. Why? Because these are customers we don't hear from. We can't afford to have conversations with them. So we believe that they have different needs than our high touch customers, but we're not able to ask as often as we want to. So this would be a great use case for that. And we would not use an AI agent to interview and have conversations with high touch customers. That's a human job. That's what they said. We'd want to go beyond basic surveys to have more open-ended strategic conversations. I love to hear that because that's what I do. Like building a VOC engine based on all these insights and then be able to tap into it like a chat GPT that learns over time. Some of you I know are already doing that. Engaging with power users at specific lifecycle moments. So this is more of the in-app, in-product aspect, or someone logs on right after implementation. What questions would you ask them? Capturing feedback at key moments that you usually can't get in a conversation with a customer, meaning it's contextual. So this is for my purposes, this one that I just circled was the loudest and most consistent answer of where sort of use case, long tail, low touch. So I would go with this one if you're looking for a takeaway from my listening tour. So then I decided, I really want to get more information on all this and I want to do some research. But if you know me, you know I don't work very hard. I'm a little lazy. So I was trying to think how I'm lazy. How can I get this done? Well, maybe I can use an AI research agent. And then I knew I had this webinar coming up with Churn Zero, and I thought maybe that would be a good thing to do and see how it goes. Again, the terminology that's being used for this is vibe research, which kind of means I feel like I need to learn this. I'm going to chat into a system that's going to play back what I want, and it's going to start building something for me, just like vibe coding, if you've heard that expression. So I went to a site, a platform called Perspective AI. There are several companies that do this. I used Perspective. I actually found it to be incredibly intuitive. And again, if you know me, I'm not into technology. I'm so thankful I don't have a tech stack for my own business. So anyway, easy to use. I typed in, and it was free for the first, I think, 25 research conversations or something like that. I typed in, what are the challenges facing customer-facing B2B professionals? How do they feel about using AI agents to get customer feedback through conversational AI? And at which point it immediately went away and said, I'll create a 3-minute research plan, et cetera. And then it gave me a link that I can either share or I could try the survey myself, which of course I did because I didn't want to just send out a link based on that little bit of information. Um, so before I go any further, because I want to give you a little deeper dive into how the research was formulated and how the platform worked, but I'm going to ask you in the chat again, what do you think I heard when I did this exercise? So 8.2 was what human leaders said, right? When I asked them face to face, or excuse me, live. Now we're talking about an agentic AI research project that I did. I put it on LinkedIn. I sent it out in my email list to customer facing professionals, including CS, but also sales, BD, and account management. What number do you think I got here? What's the average that I got back? Put it in the chat. 4, 6, 10, 7, 5, 3. Yeah, maybe we should have done a poll to get the average. So I like how Ilana Love's name says Ilana Love to everyone. It's just very uplifting. It says Ilana Love to everyone. Alicia Morgan oh, sorry, Martin Sagendorf said 9. Very, very optimistic. The answer was 6.7. I'm going to tell you that I think because the generally speaking, I believe the people that responded to the agentic AI research were more directly customer facing, probably more individual contributors, that they were less comfortable with having an AI agent talk to. Again, the difference being if you're an individual contributor, if you're on the ground talking to customers every day, it's a lot more sort of daunting versus the leadership answer was, we're going to have to do this. Whether we're 100% comfortable today or not, we have to start looking into it. So I hope you understand my logic there. So the interesting thing about agentic AI research, and again, using Perspective AI, in which I have no stake and there's no affiliate link or anything like that, is it does the conversations and then you click a button and it generates what they call a magic summary. The magic summary started out like this. Customer facing B2B professionals primary. So it was interesting because I said, I wanted it to ask, what's the hardest part of your job? So in other words, you don't just jump in and say, are you comfortable with it? What's the hardest part of your job? What are the challenges around getting feedback? Okay. So it said they struggle with gaining access to customers' time and attention, and then eliciting truly honest, actionable, deep feedback. They face challenges structuring and consolidated fragment insights, et cetera. However, significant skepticism exists around AI's ability to build genuine rapport, capture emotional nuance, and handle complex relationship-driven conversations. That doesn't really surprise me that much. So let's dive in a little bit to what happened here. How did I get there? This was the prompt that I used. And this is the answer. And it immediately offered me, do I want to try the survey myself? This is me as a user, or do I want to invite participants? And I tried it. And then I went back and said, okay, before the AI portion, the agentic AI questions, ask this question, mandatory question. Because if you don't say mandatory, it'll make a determination of whether it's going to be asked every time. What's the hardest part of your job? Which is one of the questions I teach. It's a very empathetic, sort of open-ended question. And then end with this mandatory question. What was your experience like interacting with this AI agent? So it's an agentic research about agentic AI. And then it redid it and it gave me a new link. I tried it. I made some updates. I asked it to spit out the entire conversation flow and question list that it was using. It did. And then it added, based on my inputs, these tips. The follow-up question, so I asked it to make sure to use follow-up questions based on the context. These follow-ups should be used naturally based on the participants' responses. Don't ask all of them robotically, which I thought was interesting. So that came from the robot. The goal is to encourage storytelling, clarify context, and surface concrete examples. So what you'll notice, so that's the page where you can design the survey and go back and forth with the agent. Then there's the ability to query the results. So I already have done a bunch of queries. As soon as you do a query, like what were participants' experience interacting with this AI agent? Because I wanted to know, did they think this was an effective experience? And I already got the results, and then you create something called a page. And I hope this is going to work. Actually, we'll just go back to the slides. I think it's here. Yeah. So how did participants rate or describe their experience with this AI research agent? Many participants found the experience easy, enjoyable, or better than expected, for example, and then it gives verbatims. And if you click on the little purple dots, it'll take you right to the place in the interview where it happened. Great experience. Another described it as very good. So maybe it's a little superficial there, cherry picking. Others highlighted the agent's ability to summarize responses while the AI agent did a great job of summarizing and appreciate the conversational flow. But and it did say I liked that it flowed more like a real conversation, gave me space. Why do they say that? Because they're used to filling out surveys. No one likes filling out surveys. No one likes thinking and typing out answers. I think it's easier when you can speak to the agent, and that is an option that a lot of people use, was they just clicked a button and answered the question by voice. Some people prefer to think and answer that way. So when they say it was easy and it felt like a conversation, part of that is informed by people's broad experiences now with generative AI, ChatGPT, Claude, et cetera, that they speak into something and it speaks back. Gemini, Google Gemini. But there was a decent amount of neutral or mixed feedback. It was fine. It was okay. It was obviously a robot or an agent, which I don't think the intent is ever to hide that it's an agent, but I understood that. For simple tasks, the interaction is fine. And there was some constructive criticism and suggestions. The point here is, okay, it's not perfect. But the point is how quickly you can get answers by doing this type of research and then query the research that was created to get answers that you want very quickly. And so the specific answers that are given here are interesting and I think notable, but none of it is meant to guide you to say you should or should not do agentic AI research. It depends on your requirements and your needs and your company's priorities. Listen,
Hardest part of my job probably.
that was no, there was no introduction there. What I meant to do here was say, I'm going to show you a scroll of a transcript of one of these conversations. It's been anonymized. And I'm going to give you the answers that someone gave. And this is not their real voice. I had it masked. And if you can see, here's what the agent said. Thanks for that. So what would you say is the hardest part of your job? And now I'm going to play this and you just follow the scroll and listen to what was said. And you can judge for yourself whether it seemed like a conversation.
Hardest part of my job probably getting the data we need to connect it to a clear ROI for our partners and finding ways to engage users who are the ultimate decision makers, but not the direct users of the program. Try to meet with our customers fairly regularly and have kind of executive business reviews with those leaders to really understand what metrics they want to see, and then sharing data back to them with regards to how those who are using the program are benefiting from it. I think the biggest challenge sometimes is that they maybe don't even have the data that they want to see or have a way to measure it, which kind of puts you in a hold where they say something's important but don't have the ability to actually measure it or act on it. I'm on the fence. I think it's not a real person, and
So when they say when they say they're on the fence, well, I'll just let it play. I was going to highlight what the agent asked.
So it takes that relationship out of it where I think people are maybe more open when you're actually talking to somebody and they care about you, you care about them, and they're willing to kind of help you out. Whereas the AI agent is a little bit removed from that process. It was okay. I think it was clear that it was an AI agent, so I'm not sure it's any different than really writing down a response. And it definitely feels like talking to a robot.
You know, what was interesting at the end there when the participant paused, I would say that half of us on this call would have jumped in and thought she was finished. But she had something I call verbal ellipses. So you can hear it when a customer is thinking about what they're saying. And I was impressed that the agent did not take that as an answer and move on to the next question. So, little big and little wins here. I like Bree's comment. This is such a customer friend. Yeah. So this is the point. If you're a customer, is this a more frictionless use of your time than filling out a survey or having a 30 minutes? That's the question. Bree said this is also a customer friendly thing to do where I can be doing dishes or laundry after hours and have this conversation. Now we know what Bree is doing in the evenings, apparently. So I've given you, I would say, sort of a 30,000 and maybe down to a 10,000 foot view of the process. Right. Lauren Cobb says patience score on Gong might be my fave. Me too. Let's talk, Lauren. There's some others that I want to talk to you about. So now I want to talk about what I referenced before, garbage in, garbage out. The AI conversations or the human conversations you're having with customers that are being recorded and processed by AI, whether it's Gong or, a note-taking app. The old rule that's called garbage in, garbage out, it simply means that if you don't put good data into a system, you're not going to be able to make any good decisions about the data that comes out of it. The analog here is if you have boring check the box customer conversations that don't really get them to open up, you're not going to have anything interesting for the AI to study, and you'll be very disappointed in the results. The AI can only analyze what customers talk about. How do you get them to say more? That's a very important point. And I mentioned radically authentic discovery. There are four things you need to do when you're talking to customers to get them to talk 75% of the time and to get them to talk about what's most important to them so you can do the things you need to do, which are uncover new opportunities, uncover risk, and identify how they define value. First, encourage, I call this the aperture. Engage them about the big picture that they see, their company priorities and challenges, so that the AI can help you understand the highest priority risks and opportunities. Your solution leads to something they have to accomplish in their job, which is part of their company's success. How do you connect the dots there? Ask what I call you questions. A you question is only about you. It has nothing to do with me. It doesn't lead to my agenda. Generates more candid and useful inputs for the AI to synthesize and deliver more accurate outputs. This is whether you're using AI to study recorded conversations or in an agent-based research format. STFU, which simply stands for silence till you fully understand. The more you can quiet your brain and slow your brain down, the more you can let the customer go with their flow. And that way the AI models will have much more and much richer data to study. And then the last one is AI helps listen and connect the dots. It's unemotional. I know that's might be a kind of a twist of what we want to hear and what we're used to hearing, but we are being emotional and sensitive is a beautiful thing in a human being, right? But the fact that AI is unemotional, it's not going to hear one positive comment and then go, okay, green, they're green, this customer's green, and then move on to another topic. It will do a deeper job in my vast experience now with using AI to study customer conversations, a much more accurate job of avoiding unconscious bias. And I have to say, it does, in many ways, it does a better job than I do. I've created a custom GPT on my methodology. It is more, not only faster than I am and more detailed when it gives answers, it's more generous. It always finishes with, would you like me to create an email template for your customer meeting? Would you like me to create a deck? I'm not that good of a coach, apparently. I don't do those things. So I'll leave it at that. Here's the thing. Here's the big win, I think, for customer success. I call it the ear of the vendor. And you can see that nicely on the left there, if you arrange the letters CS just the right way, it looks like an ear. Ear of the vendor means this. CS talks to customers all day, every day, a lot. And not just the job isn't just to find out if that customer is staying or leaving or can we grow them. It's to hear what's important to them. And when you do that, you are the most likely group inside of your entire company to capture voice of the customer insights. So I call it voice of the customer. You need the ear of the vendor and share those insights inside of your business to help your business grow, your company. Yes, your allegiance is to delivering customer value, but the only reason we all have jobs is if our company is being successful and our company needs those insights. AI holds the key. So what do I mean? If you look down the left, excuse me, look at the bottom of the slide. This is what I would say are the imperatives for CS, keep and grow customers, right? Uncovering expansion opportunities, avoiding surprise churn, improving forecast accuracy, maximizing forecast accuracy. And these are some rad questions that if you want to take a screenshot or take a picture of it, you're welcome to do. This is part of the teachings that I do when I do training, but I wanted to give those today as kind of a value add. Uncovering, so there are questions that you can use to uncover expansion ops and avoid surprise churn. So that's why you have a job, right? That's the basics. But in doing your job and talking to hundreds or thousands of customers a month or a year, that's going to enable your strategic mission as a team, which is refine positioning and ICP for the business, drive innovation and roadmap, detect market trends and shifts. Those are board level topics that are debated all the time, and CS should be contributing to those conversations or even leading those conversations. And using questions like these at different points in the customer journey and using AI to analyze the insights at scale makes it so much easier. Remember my chart over time, 11 years ago, it was taking me 50 hours to interview 10 or 12 customers and do the report. Now it's less than 11 hours. So you have the same advantage I do. It's just a question of what I would suspect people are thinking is, oh yeah, I have a lot of time to do this extra work you're talking about. I get that. I get that. I do think though that there is a method of doing it that doesn't take as much time with AI, and is going to be make your jobs easier and more valuable in the long run. Masiek, if I'm saying it correctly, if you're referring to the agentic AI research, it was Perspective AI. It's getperspective.ai, I believe. So with all that said, I want to answer questions, but I wanted to also leave you with this. This is sort of proof of how hard I'm leaning into AI. Again, I'm a boutique consulting training guy, right? I teach this methodology. I have a great business. I could ignore AI. I could ignore it. What I've done though is, hey, maybe it can make my job easier. Maybe it can make me more effective. And maybe it can help my clients be more successful. I just finished an engagement last week where, as part of the on-site workshop, I handed out, courtesy of my custom GPT, that RAD GPT, I handed out individual call assessments to everybody in the room. And 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I wouldn't have had the time, and and the assessments wouldn't have been as good. So the point here is, think about it. Try to avoid any or compartmentalize any sort of threats or ideas associated with AI. Those of you who use it and embrace it I guarantee you'll be more successful and more marketable as you go forward. So hit me up. Let's chat. Check out the services I offer that are sort of RAD enabled AI. But I also want to go back and take questions. Corey, I haven't had the Q&A open.
Yeah, please go ahead and submit your questions via the Q&A, and we'll get to as many as we can. And yeah, thanks, Bob, for going through that. Let's see.
I have
Um,
when you
yeah,
when you're done, I have some reactions to some things in the
sh
comments.
sure. Um, I was a question is, do you think that customers might be willing to be a little bit more honest with an AI agent versus their CSM, where they might just be trying to be polite,
I should
consciously or unconsciously?
have said that before. What a great question. There are studies that show that humans are more open and honest and candid with agents. Um, the in the B2B world as well. And
Mhm.
part of it is because of the relationship you have. So the relationship cuts both ways. They want to be nice. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't want to criticize your product. Or in other cases, they know you might react by defending the product and they don't want to bring it up because they don't want to have that back and forth. And so that's a really good point. And the answer is yes, there is some sense that customers will be more candid and open and fulsome when they're talking to an agent.
Yeah, that was my initial thought too. I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Does make sense.
Um,
But it's counter again. It's counter to
yeah,
the idea that no, my customer wants to talk to me because I'm a
yeah,
human. So
right.
it can be a little hard to swallow sometimes.
Yeah. Um, let's see. We have a question that says, should companies create an LLM or AI assistant for internal use or external use?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the questions now,
Yeah.
Q&A. So, well, I mean, I would say that companies are doing it. Should every company do it? I would say that every company should spend a little bit of time exploring how it could be used and the use cases. I guess what I'm seeing across different size companies is a very widespread use of creation of a chat GP style engine inside the firewall, right? In other words, instead of setting up everyone with their own chat GPT, is create a custom GPT inside the company that is capable of disseminating product knowledge to the team, coaching, which is my world, all manner of things that's what I'm seeing a lot. So I would say companies should be, at least every company should at least be exploring that in a serious way. And a lot of times that's coming down from the investors and the board and telling them like, why aren't you doing this? Um, Shannon asked, do you have insight into what the data says about customers' willingness, readiness to engage with AI? I'm cognizant of the CS leader sentiment that we wouldn't do this with high value customers. Does it indirectly devalue low touch customers to ask them to engage directly with AI rather than a human? So that's come up before. I don't have any stats or data. What I will say is the conversation with those CS leaders was basically, well, we're not talking to the low touch customers at all. So it is an opportunity to engage them in a what I call it a human-esque fashion, even if it's not humans. And I think there needs to be a test of let's do agentic AI research with 100 low touch customers and see how it goes, and ask them how the experience was, and look at churn 6 months later. But I think all this stuff has to be tested, and the short answer is I'm sorry, I don't have any data about that.
Do you think there's maybe different types of customer conversations that would be best suited for an AI agent versus like a human to human conversation or interview?
No, it's a good question. I mean, I'm a gap filler. And what I mean by that is I don't think we should be pushing the same types of content to customers that we would use in an email or a regular survey. Like someone here is asking about using agentic AI to replace NPS and CSAT. You could do that. What I see is what I meant, I said gap filler. The big gap for companies is they're not doing research to outside of the product customer buyer journey above that to understand what's going on in the customer's business and what's hard about their job, which then implies there's something we can fix. What is their board talking about that's going to filter down to a priority? How do they define value? Those are the topics that I think are a great use case for this type of thing. Having said that, yeah, you could replace NPS and CSAT surveys with this. It does not necessarily you're still sending customers a link or prompting them inside of another workflow. It does not necessarily fix the issue of, um, survey conversion rates or survey completion rates. That it makes it more human if you're able to talk to a survey rather than have to sit down and, enter your email and type a bunch of answers out. So it could, over time, I believe, increase participation rates. I also think there's something to be said for, like any element of a customer relationship, set expectations. It's like when you onboard them, say, hey, by the way, twice a year, you're going to be contacted by our, Corey web agent, our web agent. And that's not just an annoying thing. That's important for us. And it's an opportunity for you to give any and all honest insights about any different aspects of your experience. And we'd really appreciate it if you participate. So you let them know in advance that this is a strategic, critical part of feedback gathering, not just something that came out of nowhere. And that's an important aspect to this.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. The example that you used with the AI agent, I know you shared the video where the respondent was having a conversation speaking. Was the AI agent speaking, or was
Yeah,
it text questions
that's a
to
good
the?
question. So that's one of the areas of this presentation that probably wasn't obvious is that it speaks to you.
Okay.
And well, I didn't record that part. I think when you try it, you'll see that it speaks to you in a relatively natural way. It does summarize what you just said and before it moves on, which is always good. But it is, as someone pointed out, you're not supposed to mistake it for a human. And if you did, then you'd worry about offending it. That's part of the beauty of it. So yeah, I think I want to make a comment if I can, Corey.
Yeah,
A
please.
lot of the chat is about Yvetta's comment about the creating an advisory council. I just think it's interesting, I think advisory councils are amazing. I think it's really important. What I want to just say is that I think I'm trying to hold your attention and share some insights about scale and AI. And I think that advisory councils, in my experience, are important as relationship building, as retention tools, and as insights. But what are the ways that AI could help inform and advise? What I'm trying to do is get you to think more about AI today. How can AI help inform an advisory council? Can you use agentic AI research before the advisory council meetings to find out what's on their mind, to find out what's going on, to find out, to learn from them about what's changed in their world in the last 90 days? So, and then of course on the follow-up side. So I appreciate all the chat about the advisory council, but I think, I would just say, don't forget to focus on the non-human aspects of interaction that are really coming up here. But great, I'm glad you mentioned it because everyone seems to be really interested in the advisory council topic.
Yeah.
I think there were some questions. Um, Kristen Bryant said, I'm in the automotive e-commerce mixed bag. I've noticed there's always a segment of early adopters that want to be innovative and open to it. Yeah, so if you're testing agentic AI research, if you have signals in your database of customer personas that are in industries that are particularly tech facing or tech leaning, or there are other indicators that they might be early adopters of something, maybe they were early adopters of your technology, then, definitely I think those are people that find this stuff really interesting as a customer.
Absolutely.
Good question, Kristen.
Um, I don't know if there were any other questions in the chat that I missed. I'm trying to scan through, but
Yeah, so I just scrolling and identifying a couple quick things if we have time.
yeah.
Um, Shannon said, this is about 20 minutes ago, makes a lot of sense. Also considering what will the AI feedback reveal about the experience that could feel very personal to ICs and the leadership is further removed from. I hadn't really thought about that. That's such a good point, Shannon, that in other words, you wouldn't put an entire performance review in the hands of an agent, I think. I wouldn't. But if you're asking customers for feedback, could it also include feedback about about the team that is handling them and working with them, the relationship team. Because that is part of the customer feedback loop is the people. That's a really interesting point. Really interesting point. Really, really, really good point. Um, well, I appreciate it. If there, Corey, if you have any other questions or if you find any others.
Yeah, I don't think there's any more right now. I guess just ask you like kind of a wrap-up question as are digging into AI and how it fits into CS. Like it seems like from your own experience, you've seen it help with efficiency a lot. Um, and then it seems also like maybe it's helping to identify new insights that you might not
Yeah.
have picked up on,
Yeah.
just in your own how a human listens to things. Are there any other types of things that you've noticed as you're going through and using AI that has been a kind of a game changer for you?
Well, I, if it sounded like I was focused on the efficiency thing here, I was. But I would also point the value of the insights increases because you get them so quickly. The faster you get the insights. Yeah, I would say that there is sort of the below the line aspects and benefits to using AI, which are do more, add more value by being more efficient, lead a more balanced life. But there are so many above the line benefits. I can tell you that the insights that come out of AI generated analyses of gong recordings, for example,
Mhm.
are far better and far more consistently better than what humans get. And unfortunately, a lot of times gong recordings sit in a data center somewhere and are never listened to anyway. So just the idea that after a call, you can read what the AI note taker said, and you can say, "Oh, you know what? I totally missed that." That could be the difference between keeping, growing, or misidentifying the health score of a customer. So I
Yeah.
think there's just so many anecdotes in my world about those things that it's going to catch more than you do, and that's what your job is to be an accurate forecaster of churn and an accurate forecaster of new revenue opportunities that you can achieve. And so I think there's a tremendous above the line sort of value to all this.
Awesome.
There is a question from Conrado. How to move forward with what you described if your company uses Gong? We use Gong for note taking primarily. I don't even know if there's a way to aggregate client conversations. Happy to chat with you about that. But the short answer is that, um, you, you know, so if you're talking about aggregating client conversations, there are ways to do that that are native to Gong, but there are ways to do it that may be more effectively synthesized and assessed by exporting the transcripts and aggregating those transcripts. So it depends on what you're seeking to get out of it, Conrado. I hope I'm saying it correctly. But if I can help elucidate, that any further, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I'm happy to share that. And what Corey and I did a few years ago was there were some questions that people thought of afterwards, and I made a video answering them, and we sent that
Yep.
out. I'm happy to do that as well.
I'd also like to add that that is a component of Churn Zero where we do pull in call recordings and do that analysis for you at an aggregate level within a customer account, and give you an engagement score, relationship score. So that is certainly something that Churn Zero can help with as well.
Yeah, I want just to let everyone know, I had a demo not long ago of all the Churn Zero real world AI features and initiatives, and it is stunning. It's totally transformed the way you can do things now versus 9 months ago. I was really blown away, and that's what Corey just mentioned is one of them.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we don't have any more questions this time. So just want to remind everyone that we will be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to the recording that you can watch again or share with your colleagues. And at the end of this webinar, you'll see a survey pop up. I'd appreciate it if you just take a quick minute to provide your feedback there. We would really appreciate it. And thanks for everyone for joining us today. It was great to chat with you, Bob, as always. So thanks everyone and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Corey, so much.
Yep.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.